Keir Starmer's Labour Party has also made big promises on the environment, of course, a £28 billion a year Green Jobs and Energy Transition Fund. Earlier in the week, we talked about the trade unions' hostility to Labour stopping oil and gas drilling in the North Sea. Yesterday, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, piled in as well. Eco-zealots at Just Stop Oil are writing Keir Starmer's energy policy and not content with disrupting our summer, he said, and cherished sporting events, they are essentially leading us into an energy surrender. His zealots remark also seemed to refer to the green eco-tycoon Dale Vince, who's funded Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion, the Green Party, and to the tune of £1.5 million, Labour as well. In recent days, we've heard much less about this £28 billion, and there are suggestions that the Labour plan, up to now a centrepiece of its thinking for the future, might be paused or watered down or even dropped in the face of press and media hostility. Dale Vince came into the studio to talk to me after taking part himself in a Just Stop Oil protest in central London, and he reflected first about the impact of Caroline Lucas.
I've known Caroline for some time. I've been in the news this week for funding all kinds of people. Caroline's one of the people I helped fund to get re-elected many years ago now. And I understand actually why she's giving up, because I considered going into politics in order to try and have some sway in the coming election to try and change what's happening in our country. But concluded some months ago that it wasn't really the best way to bring change. I think she's come to the same conclusion, actually.
And is that because you see Parliament as too small C conservative, too stuck in the mud, too slow to react, too slow to respond?
Well, I guess in my case, being an MP, I think would be more restrictive than being free to speak out and do the things that I do. I think in terms of our democracy, first past the post doesn't create a representative parliament.
I want to come on to that because obviously you've been famous recently for helping fund the Labour Party, Keir Starmer. Before we come on to electoral reform, which is obviously part of this story, how do you react to the Prime Minister saying that Keir Starmer's energy policy, his green policies in particular, were being written by ecological zealots? And I think he meant you.
I think
and basically it was being dictated and very dangerous for our energy security.
It's a cheap slur. Right. This is a desperate attempt to throw some dirt at Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, who are doing so well in the polls. The Conservative Party are desperate. There's no connection. The right-wing media tried to whip it up in the last week or so, I would say. I've been funding Labour for more than 10 years. In all of that time, I've never asked for anything. I've always told them I don't want anything. I just want them to win the election. And I haven't spoken to Keir or the Labour Party about North Sea or North Sea policy or Just Stop Oil. I just haven't. But the Daily Mail kicked it off about a week ago and just the Sun claimed there was a secret meeting, which didn't happen. I mean, honestly, it's frustrating. But to see our own Prime Minister kind of get down and dirty in that respect as well, I think it's a real shock. And I have to say this as well. Rishi Sunak has no mandate for drilling in the North Sea. He has no mandate from the British public for anything. He should do the decent thing and call an election.
Let's return to the North Sea issue, however, because this is a genuinely difficult issue for the Labour Party. They've committed, at the moment, £28 billion a year. So that's a vast amount of money to a green transition, getting off oil and gas and spending the money on the new technologies and the new jobs coming. But there is clearly a move inside the shadow cabinet to say this is too ambitious, it's a hostage to fortune, and we should slow pedal on it or possibly delay it or possibly even abandon it. What would your view of that be?
I think that would be a mistake. I think the 28 billion is a well thought out sum of money and targeted spend. It's in alignment with what we need to do to get to net zero. We know that. We also know that investing in green technology is a good investment. We get back more than we put in. We've crunched numbers for that. The investment in different energy technologies, for example, you get far more back than you put in terms of GVA, GDP, and of course jobs and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, if you run the company like a business, which the Conservatives used to claim to do, you would invest in green energy now, because any money we spend on fossil fuels is just wasted. It's single-use fuel. The energy crisis itself has already cost us £150 billion as a country, compared to that 28 billion a year seems rather small, I would say. We can get to 100% green electricity in about a decade, and we don't even need to spend a lot of money to do it. And sorry, that's a lot of rambling messaging, but it's frustrating to hear from the right wing all of the time that we can't afford to go green when actually we can't afford not to.
You are quite clear that your relationship with Keir Starmer is not a transactional relationship. You're not saying, here's the money and here's what I want at any point. Putting that to one side, as it were. However, if Labour rode back on those commitments, and I had a conversation with one Labour figure the other day where he said the possibility of new oil and gas licences would be on the table if they were necessary in the future. If there was a rolling back on that, would that make your support for the Labour leadership falter?
No.
No.
No, but let me say this. There is no scenario in the future wherein we need more North Sea oil and gas. There is no scenario. It can't lower our energy bills. We've seen that. We allow global markets to set the price of fossil fuels that we make here. Half of Britain's gas comes from the North Sea, and in the energy crisis, we paid 10 times more for it than normal, which created the windfall profits. So it doesn't matter how much we drill the North Sea, we won't lower energy bills. So there is no scenario in the future where we need it.
You've been a vehement supporter of Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion and the other groups pursuing extra parliamentary activity of one kind. We discussed why Parliament may not be the best route for people like you, but it's been extra parliamentary. But Chris Packham recently has said that actually if there is no movement from the government, people should go further and they should think about breaking the law to bring this to public attention. Do you agree with them?
Well, that's a tough one, isn't it? It depends on what kind of law you're talking about breaking, right? I draw the line at any form of violence, for example, but like slow marching down the streets, which is, I think, about to become illegal. I think that's going to the House of Lords now. I mean, I would break that law for sure. I was on a protest just now with Just Stop Oil.
So peaceful, disruptive protest is fine.
Absolutely. And, you will find yourself on the wrong side of the law just if you do that. But certainly I'd draw the line at violence. And all of the people in Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion draw the very same line. It's a non-violent movement.
Let me just read to you what Chris Packham has said to get this clear. He says, peaceful protest has been a cornerstone of activism, but as the urgency grows, we must question whether it's enough. What will compel decision makers to listen and take decisive action? The time for complacency has long passed, and it's up to us to drive a tornado of change that cannot be ignored. Our planet's survival depends on it.
That's quite impactful. From my own perspective, the big opportunity we have is the coming election. In 12 to 18 months' time, we get the chance to vote for what I think will be the greenest government that we've ever had and perhaps that the world has ever seen, because Labour, as far as I can tell, understands the whole green economy thing as well as the urgent need to tackle the climate crisis. But what's changed in the last few years, apart from the urgency of tackling the climate crisis, is that we've gone from a place where the environment used to be something that was going to cost us money. It was a good thing to do, but it would cost us money. We're in a place now where the environment is something that isn't just a good thing to do. It makes us or saves us money.
Dale, we started off by mentioning the electoral system. We are very unusual, certainly among European parliaments, in not having any substantial or meaningful green group of MPs in our parliament. That's because of our voting system. How important, therefore, in your view, is it for a reforming government to change the voting system?
I would very much like to see it happen. I think it's one of the most important changes could take place in our country. Our parliament does not represent our people. The Conservatives under Johnson won an 80-seat majority with 40% of the vote, right? That's how unrepresentative it is. And you've got Caroline Lucas plugging away as the lone Green MP for years now, when the Green share of the vote in the election should have created a dozen or so Green MPs. If you look to Germany, they're a great example of proportional representation, how that it works, and it represents the cross-section of the culture of Germany. And we don't have that. We have a flip-flop between left and right, red and blue, periodically. And I think it's bad for us. And you can see that if you look around our country, what's happening.
Dale Vince there, the Labour Party and Just Stop Oil donor. Now, coming up in